you got, though?
Don't worry, son. Stick with me. You'll be just fine.
When Team Fortress 2 was in its prime, a lot of effort went into a comic series. Jay Pinkerton was responsible for writing the comics, and Heather Campbell was responsible for the incredible artwork. There were quite a few comics released, and they were mainly brought out to promote a new update for the game whenever they came out, but this isn't something we really see anymore. In the comics, a certain metal appears throughout and plays a key role in the majority of the stories. And while the metal appears in the comics, it also appears in the games as one of the most notable types of weapons, the Australium weapons. These weapons were introduced all the way back in 2013, and are obtainable through the MVM campaigns as a random drop. The one thing you should know about these drops is how unbelievably rare they are. I mean, I don't even own one of these weapons, and I've done God knows how many MVM tours. Now, most people probably think that these weapons are just made of gold, and I wouldn't blame you, since two Australian weapons are literally called gold, like the golden frying pan and the golden wrench, but it's not actually true. They're made from an extremely rare and expensive metal called Australium. But to understand Australium, we first need to look at a character called Saxton Hale. Saxton Hale is probably one of the most important characters in the entire series. He's the president and CEO of Mann, and he's the main protagonist in a majority of the comics. You may also know him from the versus Saxton Hale mode, and the fact he's able to take on an entire team of people just shows you how strong he is. While most kids sleep with a teddy bear at night, Saxton Hale slept with an actual bear that he tamed in the Brazilian jungles. Saxton Hale is a very unique looking character, identified by his large moustache, buff body, and his chest hair that is in the shape of Australia. He also refuses to wear clothes on the upper half of his body for, quote-unquote, obvious reasons. Saxton Hale is the current male of the Hale family to take up the responsibility of Mann. Saxton Hale was introduced over the course of the Sniper vs Spy update. He can be seen in a few of the promotions and some of the posters that were created, and while he was initially just intended to be a one-shot gag for the update, he became popular within the TF2 community, and from then on became a notable figure in Team Fortress 2. In the Jungle Inferno video Valve released, it's explained that Saxton Hale had converted one of his weapon factories into a Yeti fighting theme park. However, as things usually don't go well, the Yeti escapes and attempts to kill everybody, including the unfortunate red team that had just arrived. After tracking down the Yeti, Saxton Hale defeats it in a single punch that causes it to explode, in a violent explosion of guts, gibs and blood. Saxton Hale then receives a phone call letting him know that he had just killed the last Yeti. Saxton then repurposes the theme park so that the TF2 mercenaries can fight each other. I'll be making a full video on characters like Blutark and Redmond, but you don't really need to have an idea of who they are other than that they hate each other and they both hired the blue and red team to fight over the land that they want to own. In the TF2 lore, Australium plays a big role in bringing a lot of the story pieces together. Australium was discovered in Australia, surprisingly, and despite being a rare metal, it also has other almost magical properties. Prolonged exposure to Australium increases both intelligence and manliness. Signs of exposure include an increase in muscle mass, an increased aptitude for fighting, heavy drinking, and an increased growth of facial hair, and it even appears in women. The discovery of Australium is what caused Australia's rapid technological advancements, including cloaking devices, teleportation, and the entire spectrum of the moustache sciences. While the rest of the world was lagging behind, Australia was at the forefront of new and innovative technology. And the majority of the Australian population were large and bulky, and terrifying to fight, all because of this rare metal. Australium is often sold and traded in the form of large solid bars, similar to the way gold is often preserved. Despite all the similar appearances and properties of gold, like the colour and reflectivity, Australium can also be identified by the logo of a man fighting a kangaroo. In the TF2 lore, the way Australia chooses its next king is for somebody to fight a kangaroo and win. Australians are also extremely secretive about Australium, and rightfully so, as they quickly outpace the rest of the world with their innovative technology. Australium was used as a payment to Del Conager's grandfather, Radigan. For those who don't know, Del Conager is just the engineer. His grandfather built a life extender machine for both Blutark Man and Redmond Man. He did this to further their attempts at outliving each other and finally inherit the land given to them by their father. Radigan Conager is believed to have found countless more caches of Australium, and Del later discovers hidden files that detail these caches. The United States once had a supply of Australium, and it was all invested in the attempt to launch a monkey astronaut called Poopy Joe into space. They wanted to do this before the Russians did the same with their own monkey astronaut. Following the tragic failure of this attempt, the Australium went missing. As a result of this incident, Saxton Hale and the administrator were both brought before a US Senate hearing investigating the disaster. As far as it's known, the US has no more supplies of Australium. In fact, the US reserves were stolen, hoarded in a £200,000 store of Australium in a vault beneath Mann. After Greyman seizes control of Mann, he discovers the vault only to find it empty. He deduced that it was the administrator who took the rest of it because of a cigarette within the safe. So while that's a lot of lore, it's essential to know that Australium is used to either prolong someone's life or in general just make them stronger. But in the games, Australium doesn't really do any of these things, and it mainly just acts as a super cool strange weapon. It's always cool how Valve seems to take seemingly boring things like a different coloured weapon and turn them into a really big deal. Like they didn't have to make Australium so important, but they did anyways.